Ladies and gentlemen, our top story is a developing one. As we speak, it's been 2.5 hours since Bangladesh's deposed Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina landed at the Hindon Air Base in Ghaziabad. As her country burns and the army takes over, question is, where is she headed? Reports are suggesting that she has sought asylum from UK, but the UK hasn't said anything publicly so far. So for the moment, Sheikh Hasina remains on Indian soil. Question is, for how long? Back in Bangladesh, there is complete mayhem despite the army's promise of putting in an interim government as soon as this evening. So intense is the anger against Hasina that her father Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's statue and a museum dedicated to him have been vandalized. The Prime Minister's official residence has been invaded and lakhs of people are on the streets, as you can see. It all started 3 months ago at the Dhaka University over quotas in jobs and will hopefully end with an increasingly dictatorial Prime Minister fleeing the scene. Take a look at how things have played out so far.
The house of Hasina has fallen again. Almost half a century after its founding father was deposed in a coup and assassinated by his own army. Today, his daughter and the woman who led Bangladesh for the last 15 years is forced to flee her motherland. Her palace taken over by her own people. For now, it's future tense in Dhaka.
সেখানে আমরা সিদ্ধান্ত নিয়েছি যে একটা ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট আমরা ফর্ম করব এবং ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্টের মাধ্যমে এই দেশের সমস্ত কার্যকলাপ চলবে। আপনারা সেনাবাহিনীর প্রতি আস্থা রাখেন, সশস্ত্র বাহিনীর প্রতি আস্থা রাখেন। আমি সমস্ত দায়িত্ব নিচ্ছি। আপনাদের জানমাল এবং আপনাদেরকে আমি কথা দিচ্ছি যে আপনারা আশাহত হবেন না।
Sheikh Hasina's hasty departure marks the tipping point of what began as a student protest against a contentious move to reserve up to 30% of government jobs for families of veterans of the 1971 Liberation War. The protest, which began late last month, escalated dramatically when students at Dhaka University clashed violently with the police, leading to at least 300 dead officially. India has always had concerns of Bangladesh becoming a puppet in the South Asian region, and there are many who could possibly benefit from Hasina's fall from power. The obvious suspect is China, already seething after Dhaka had rebuffed Beijing and decided to partner New Delhi in the $1 billion Teesta River Development Project. Earlier this year, China was believed to have played a key role in the India Out protests that took place in the run-up to the elections. Even China's geopolitical rival, the United States, has a vested interest. Since 2022, external actors, predominantly Western countries, have been intervening in Bangladesh's election process, expressing concern over human rights abuses. And then there is old rival Pakistan, with reports coming in that the Chhatro Shibir, the student wing of the banned Jamaat-e-Islami, allegedly backed by the ISI, was inciting violence and turning student protests into a political movement. Sources say that Pakistan's army and ISI wanted to destabilize Sheikh Hasina's government and restore the opposition BNP to power. So far, it seems things are going exactly as per the script. Bureau Report, Mirror Now.
I'm going straight across to ABM Sarkar, who's a former Assistant Press Secretary to the Prime Minister who has fled her country, Sheikh Hasina. He's joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Sarkar, thank you very much for your time here on Mirror Now. A difficult period for Bangladesh. In fact, it's been a difficult period for Bangladesh for the last 3 months. Can I ask you if there is any confirmation about the UK granting Sheikh Hasina asylum, whether she has sought it and whether it has been granted, sir?
Thank you, Ms. Preeti. I'm joining from Bangladesh. You know the situation. It is very clear now to the domestic and the international affairs. With regard to your question, it is really unknown to me. I do not know anything about the request for the asylum. It is totally unknown to me. But I can say Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is very firm in her character. I have seen so far in last 5.5 years, as I worked very closely with her during this period of time.
Sir, is that what has gone against her? Being so firm that you do not want to listen to the voices of students for the last 3 months, which is why the situation has gotten to where it has gotten?
That answer was for like you asked me about the request for the asylum, right? But in the contrary, what you were asking me now, that is about whether she has listened to the voice of the students and the others or not. In that regard, I can say, like she is to me because I'm very much emotionally attached to her during my whole journey of life, and I am really blessed to work with her during last 5.5 years. In this last 5.5 years, I have seen her as the mother of the humanity also. So in that case, she of course listened to the voices of the students and the protesters, and she doesn't want any further bloodshed on the street and the outside of the houses. For that reason, actually, she
Sir, can you
decided to resign. Yeah.
Okay. So my next question was that you just prompted me to my next question. Mr. Sarkar, I wanted to ask you what prompted Sheikh Hasina to resign. There are reports that are saying that the army had to sit her down for 45 minutes and convince her to sign her resignation letter. Is that true, sir? Is that something you can confirm for us?
I don't think someone convinced her. I know her as a very firm personality. She is not convinced by any military forces or military personnels. I think she is convinced by the protester students, and she doesn't want any bloodbath on the street. That's why she decided to resign.
Okay. Mr. Sarkar, then can I ask you a resignation if you're telling me that she decided to resign because she didn't want a bloodbath on the streets? The fact is the bloodbath has been happening for the last 3 months. She could have simply resigned and not fled the country. Maybe seen that there is a transition government that is put in place. My question to you is, why did she flee the country, sir?
Maybe it's a situation demand. I cannot say more than that.
Okay. Do you think there was a threat to her life, sir, given the pictures that have come in from Dhaka where we've seen the Prime Minister's house being invaded?
Of course, there is life threat throughout her whole journey of life, Her father, including the 18 member of her family members, has been killed by the, military persons in the 1975. And it is the month of August. There are some factors behind the protesting students who were actually the gainer of this movement. They are the gainer. I don't know how the students can be so ferocious on the street. Their demand has been fulfilled. Now, could you please? Yeah. Interruption. Hello.
Okay, my last question to you, sir. Here in India, the Prime Minister has been briefed by the External Affairs Minister. The NSA of the country has met Ms. Sheikh Hasina at the Hindon Air Base, where she continues to be. Do you have any any inkling about how long she's going to stay and whether it is India that she's planning to stay in or whether she will be flying out to London or Finland? So any indication at all about where she goes from here?
Actually, I have learned this from the social media after flying from the Bangladesh. Honorable Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina flew from the Bangladesh. Then I have seen that information in the social media. The same information you asked me, I gathered it from the social media. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Sarkar, we'll leave it there for the moment. Appreciate you joining us in what has been a tough hour and a tough day for Ms. Hasina and her team. Thank you very much for joining us. My
Thank you
guest
so much
this
also.
evening, Farid Hussain, is the editor, United News of... Thank you, sir. Farid Hussain is editor, United News of Bangladesh. He's joining us on the broadcast. Shamsher M Choudhary is the former Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh, joining us on the broadcast as well. Hasni Haider is the Diplomatic Affairs editor at The Hindu, joining us this evening. Thanks, Hasni. And Maroof Raza is a security expert. He's joining us on the broadcast as well. Hasni, can I just come to you first and ask you what you are hearing? It's been a little over 2.5 hours. Sheikh Hasina has been at the Hindon Air Base here in Ghaziabad. What happens next?
So from what I understand, Shreya, Sheikh Hasina's plane landed, as you said, about 2.5 hours ago, about 5:15 or so India time at the Hindon Air Base. This is, as you know, a little further away from Delhi, not really in the city. And what we know is that there's been a string of visitors for her in the last few hours. The National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, is believed to have met her. And spoken to her. The Western Air Command Chief has been there as well. We understand the MEA has been involved really closely in arrangements for Ms. Hasina, and we understand her sister as well, Sheikh Rehana, to this point. Beyond that, what we can tell you on the basis of sources that we've been speaking to is that on landing here, Ms. Hasina made it clear that she would be seeking asylum in the United Kingdom, as you've been reporting as well. From what we understand, the request is under consideration and is likely to go through. Remember, her sister Rihanna already is a British citizen, and her niece Tulip Siddiq is a member of parliament in the UK. And there is, of course, a large, sizable Bangladeshi community over there, including many of her supporters. Let's remember that to our other neighbor, Pakistan, we have seen a number of leaders, whether it was Benazir Bhutto, Nawaz Sharif, also take that route. The UK has close ties, of course, to the region. So what we understand so far, without being speculative, is that she's here. She is meeting with Indian officials. She's obviously not come into the city, which should perhaps be an indicator that perhaps this is not her final stop. We have not got responses from the Ministry of External Affairs for several hours now, even though it was clear that once she had to leave Dhaka, that she would be coming to Delhi, about whether she had requested asylum from India. Remember, in 1975, after her father and her entire family practically was murdered in Dhaka, Sheikh Hasina and her sister had lived in India, had taken asylum in India for several years. But we haven't really heard anything officially from the government yet. All eyes really will be on what kind of message India wants to send, because there is the message they need to send to Sheikh Hasina, an old ally of India. She's been a traditionally good friend for India since she became Prime Minister, but also the kind of message New Delhi will now send to Dhaka.
We'll talk about what this means for India in just a bit, but news that is breaking in is this. There's an emergency meeting currently underway at the Prime Minister's residence. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, Home Minister Amit Shah, part of this meeting. Not very tough to say that this will be about Bangladesh and the situation that is developing there and how it could impact India. Before we get to that, though, Farid Hussain, you're joining us from Bangladesh. Can I ask you what the situation on the ground is? Through the day, we have seen very dramatic pictures of arson, of rioting, of raiding coming from the streets of Dhaka and elsewhere. Has the situation calmed down, or does it remain the same, sir?
Not exactly, there are some disturbing reports we are getting, attacks, arson attacks on Awami League, pro-Awami League leaders' houses, their central office in Dhaka, has just been set on fire. And there is Bangabandhu Museum at Dhanmondi, that is where Sheikh Bangabandhu was assassinated in 1975. That house has been transformed into a museum. That has also been attacked and vandalized. You get reports that reports of attacks on some private television stations deemed to be pro-Awami League, pro-government. So these are disturbing, and looting, and also reports of looting. So it's still, far from normalcy. So that's what we are seeing.
Okay, so essentially what you're telling us is, despite the army taking over, despite the army saying that we are putting an interim government in place, despite the army appealing to students and others on the streets for peace, there is no peace on the streets of Dhaka this evening. I mean, if you have a Sunday evening where 100 people are killed, Monday is not going to be easy for any regime. Shamsher M Choudhary, you've served as the former Foreign Secretary. All right. Let me quickly go across to Maruf Raza, who joins us on the broadcast as well. Maruf, we had the press secretary of Sheikh Hasina come on the show and say, look, the people who are writing, there's a question mark on their integrity and what they actually want. Fact is that whatever they wanted has been granted to them. They wanted a U-turn as far as the quotas were concerned. The Supreme Court did that. From 30%, the quotas were scaled down to 5%. Right? Sheikh Hasina asked for talks. These protesters refused talks. Now, if you've been given what you wanted, what else did you want? Why this escalation?
Well, to give you a straight answer to your blunt question, they wanted Sheikh Hasina out. And this has been in the offing in Bangladesh for at least 5 to 7 years, where political parties like the Jamaat and others that have the blessings of the opposition of Begum Zia, they had been working towards destabilizing Bangladesh. Now, what Sheikh Hasina had done is that she had made it known that she was not looking to win friends. And she was going to go ahead and run Bangladesh the way she thought was wise. The problem is that Bangladesh has, partly because of the leanings of their local businessmen, politicians, and military officers, to lean towards China for handouts and blessings. China saw itself playing a major role there. Secondly, Pakistan has always been wanting to come in. I've heard whispers about, one faith, two nations. So Pakistan is wanting to get back into play. Although I've personally seen in Dhaka that there is a complete dislike for the Pakistan army and the genocide they had unleashed in 71. Third is the fact that India always waits and watches for things to get completely out of control before we get activated. I know of a fact that our former High Commissioner, Mr. Shingla, was looking for providing, Bangladesh financial assistance for the Rohingyas that were given shelter by Bangladesh. But there was a resistance in Delhi to provide them that. So basically, Delhi had also indirectly, I'm sorry to say, been working towards the collapse of Bangladesh. Now, point is, if it collapses, what do you get? You get another regime wearing similar clothes like this one, only they have a new political name and a political identity. The second thing is, we, as our foreign office, and this is something my studies have shown, has always been averse to seeking inputs from those who have hands-on knowledge about a country or a territory. That's why we were caught on our flat feet in Sri Lanka when everything went out of control a year ago. That's why we were caught on the flat feet in Maldives where a country the size of Maldives, despite all that we have done for them, could show us ice. And the same story is going to unleash in Bangladesh, because everyone is going to turn around and say,
okay,
one of the trouble creators is India. If Sheikh Hasina takes full-time shelter here, as happened with the
okay,
refuge that Dalai Lama received in India in 59-60, because China
okay.
said, see, we've been saying India was playing into the Tibet process, and despite Nehru's good attempts
But Mr.
of
Raza,
winning the Chinese over
I
with
think it's
having backbending steps,
okay.
and at the end of the day,
Mr.
we were
Raza,
looked.
I think it's fairly clear that she hasn't sought asylum here in India. I mean, there is no official word that has come from the UK, but Suhasini is reporting this. There are multiple reports that seem to be suggesting that she has sought asylum in the UK, like many other leaders from South Asia who've been booted out of their countries. The net is terrible in Bangladesh. We know that the net has been off for a very long while there. Every time some writing begins, the first thing that goes off is the net. Shamsher M Choudhary, thankfully, is joining us. Let me quickly go across to him till he has that connectivity. He's the former Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh. Mr. Choudhary, can I ask you what you make of the current army arrangement in Bangladesh? Will that hold? The army has said, we are going to form an interim government. What will be the shape and size of this interim government? And will the protesters be willing to listen to this interim government? So far, at least according to reports that are coming in from Bangladesh, they aren't.
I think it's a very valid question. I believe that the army, the military has the best of intentions, but now we have a mob situation, and mob situations always tend to go out of control, at least initially. And we hope that this will be controlled sooner than later. I think Sheikh Hasina mishandled, well, not I think, I know for sure that she mishandled the student emotions at the very beginning. And she reacted too little, too late, far too little, far too late. She was being very dismissive about the whole things. And well, now we all know what the fate is. One report says she's going to London to seek asylum. The other report from India says, the sources in India say she's going to Belarus. I don't think that is going to happen. The thing is that it is important for India to engage all sides. It is, you have to, the choice is whether you build relationship with a government or with the people of the country. There's 170 million people. And we have a very historical relationship going back to 1971. I am myself a freedom fighter. I was wounded in the war fighting Pakistan. And the present generation of youth, believe me, they don't even know what Pakistan is. I mean, Pakistanis don't understand Pakistan. So how can our people understand Pakistan? And the fact that the military playing a major role in the politics of the country in the long term is not something that Bangladeshis today want. Problem is that today the youth see as the political forces are too combative against each other, dismissive of the other, zero-sum game. It's a zero-sum game. In India, you don't have a zero-sum game. In India, you have credible, the people have trusted your electoral process. Here, the people trust electoral process is now zero. I took part in election myself last time. I know how my election was, how badly my election was rigged. So what happens when in a situation like this, that you go through an interim period, how the interim period shape up is something very difficult to understand. It's important for India to engage the forces that don't keep on jumping to, extremist religious forces who, they will not. Jamaat never got more than 3% votes in Bangladesh. They never got more than 3% votes in Bangladesh. They may be well organized, they may have support group, yes, things have changed, they have grown. But end of the day, Awami League is an old party. It has deep roots in the country. It has to come to the fore without a Sheikh name in the leadership. And that India, I'm sure, realizes that Indian diplomats are very good foreign policy. I was in Delhi very recently, only till about last week, I was in Delhi, talking to all groups of people, think tanks, so the retired diplomats, and the Indian
Give me a minute here.
And I told him that you cannot be dismissive to
give me a minute
millions
here.
of youth.
Sure. But is it just the youth? The point is, Sheikh Hasina has said that these are terrorists who are on the streets of Dhaka and elsewhere. These are not just students. Because if these were just students, then we've given them what they wanted. What is the point of still continuing these protests and vandalizing and rioting? But so, Hasini Haider, I want to come to you with a question that many people are asking in the newsroom. Did Sheikh Hasina see this coming? Now, this is something that, Maruf seems to be suggesting, but over the last 3-4 months, you've had at least a couple, if not more, visits by Sheikh Hasina to India. Meeting not just the Prime Minister, but the Gandhi family as well. Did she see this coming? Perhaps, possibly.
There is certainly all evidence that they did see the protests of last month as something unprecedented. After all, Sheikh Hasina had won the election in January this year. The fact that from July 1st onwards, the government faced such strong protests, the kind of violence we saw, the kind of deaths we saw, and we still don't really know the extent of how many people were killed in the violent protests, in the crackdown by the police that followed. So there was a sense that things were unprecedented. In fact, even last month, we had heard that the government or Sheikh Hasina's office was in touch with places about possibly needing to leave the country. So Finland, for example, was on the map at that time, and the idea that she might go to Helsinki as well. And then those protests seemed to die down. In the last week, even though, as I think her former press secretary said, even though Hasina agreed to the protesters' original demands on the quota, and the Supreme Court had also, its appellate court, had given a verdict that favored them, Hasina's government tried again to crack down on the protesters, and especially the leaders of those student groups who were then taken into custody and were roughed up. And I think that started the protests again. There's no question that opposition groups, the Jamaat Shibir, are also involved in this violence. Obviously, Bangladesh does have a history of this kind of very, very extreme political violence. And I'm sure that there must have been some understanding that things were getting out of control. I think one of the key factors is also what the role of the army was. Because it seems to be from just eyewitness accounts that the army wasn't as keen on the kind of crackdown that the police and paramilitary were carrying out. And that kind of difference itself always is an indicator of the government. And perhaps one last indicator would have come last night when the MEA put out an advisory. Remember, India has so far really protected the Hasina government and not spoken openly about its concerns about what's happening. Even last month, when they evacuated about 7,000 students, there was very little word about India's own feelings about what was happening inside Bangladesh. They said again and again, this is an internal matter. And yet, to see an advisory that says, in view of the prevailing situation, we advise Indian nationals not to travel to Bangladesh, and those who are there to really be in touch with the High Commission. It meant that there was a sense that things were getting further out of control. But obviously, what happened today doesn't seem to have been well planned, doesn't seem to have been enough time for packing. We understand from people there that Sheikh Hasina had wanted to address her country before she left, was not allowed to do so. There was really very little time given how close the mobs had reached Gana Bhavan.
Okay, Shamsher Choudhary, I have exactly 20 seconds on the show. I want to conclude with you, since you're the voice joining us from Bangladesh. Can I ask you if this is the end of the House of Hasina? There will be elections, right? Do you see her coming back, possibly fighting the elections? Last time she fought the elections, it was a walkover. The opposition hadn't participated. The elections were called rigged. Possibly that is where the seeds of what is happening today were sown. Do you think this is the end of Sheikh Hasina? Or do you think you'll see her back in Bangladesh sooner rather than later?
I don't know. I don't know if it is the end of Sheikh Hasina, whether she'll be at all interested again to take the plunge, but I don't think it is the end of the Awami League. It is an old party. It has deep roots.
Okay, she's 76 years old.
Yeah, it is. Just short immediately after Pakistan was born. So it has to do some self-introspection. The Awami League needs serious self-introspection, going back to the values of truth. I mean, the Awami League made friends with the Jamaat also. you know, you have Islam as a state religion in Bangladesh and secularism at the same time in the constitution. Sheikh Hasina did it for her own convenience. She changed the textbooks of Bangladesh to pacify the Islamist extremists. So this is where the Awami League should go back to its ideological mooring of the old, be tolerant, be able to accommodate different dissent, and, you know, be ready to face an election. You lose one election, you win the next election. You know, this is every election in Bangladesh that was held under the caretaker government has seen a change of government. Awami League won once, BNP won the next time, Awami League won the next time, BNP won the next time. That system that has to come back to Bangladesh. And I think the extremists will never gain that much strength in Bangladesh because the youth is actually a progressive lot. They are far, I mean, so many women out there in the front, so many women out there in the front. Very progressive women out there in the front who are leading the things. Some of the lawyers who were there.
Okay, let's hope so. The last thing you want... Okay, Shamsher Choudhary, we'll leave it there. The last thing India or anyone in the neighborhood will want is extremist elements taking hold of Bangladesh. We hope for the sake of Bangladesh and for the rest of the region that is something that doesn't happen. For the moment, thank you very much. Fareed Hussain, thank you very much for joining us. Shamsher Choudhary, thank you very much. Suhasini Haider, thank you very much. And thank you very much, Maruf Raza, for joining us on this broadcast. I'm fairly certain this is not the end of the conversation, given the fact that Sheikh Hasina continues to be on Indian soil as we speak. Let's see how the story develops through this evening, the night, and possibly tomorrow morning. For the moment, we know that the Prime Minister is meeting with the Home Minister and the Defence Minister as we speak to speak about the situation that is developing in Bangladesh and Sheikh Hasina at the Hindon airport as we speak. A quick break. There's more on the other side. Do stay with us.
Where is Raghav?
Boss, I just saw Raghav walking towards the parking lot.
Boss, Raghav left